What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Back to the Past. I am Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Yakuza 0, a game that I am now currently familiar with. So I want to walk you through my story into this franchise, and it ends actually at this game, and talk about just how awesome I think this game is. So I am now a fan of the franchise. I'm ready to say it. I'm ready to embrace it. I got a lot of these games left to go, but I wanted to start in order. So I started obviously with the prequel game, and I've seen a lot of people say that this game is considered the best in the entire franchise. So hopefully it doesn't kind of all go downhill after this, but what a wild ride. Not just this game is, but of course I've heard of the rest of the franchise. I've always stayed away from these games for whatever reason. I've never jumped in. I think it was always maybe too daunting. I'm not like opposed to these kind of games at all. I just never went for it. I think maybe having so many of these games, having all these different characters, it's a bit confusing. This game, in fact, is a little bit confusing, I would say. Now, I watched some story explained afterwards after I played it just to make sure I had everything, organized and right. Made sure I had some of the names, but honestly, I held on pretty well throughout the game. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of understanding the family and the clans, right? These different kind of factions. As long as you kind of keep it all together, I think you can understand the story, at least of this game. So let's talk about it. I'm going to do story last, just because I think it's the most wild ride of the entire thing. But let's talk about the game itself. So this is a big game, and it's a game that, for me, didn't take too long. It didn't take actually as much as the average length to beat it, but I also was skipping around. I did maybe 25 to 28, maybe somewhere in that range of the side missions. I believe there's 100 of them in the game. I did about 25, so, a quarter of them. I did a lot of them in the beginning, and then as the story kind of started picking up, it's like, oh my God, I got to continue this and see where it goes. But I did some of them, and I really enjoy the side missions. It's honestly, in terms of the diversity of the game, like doing different things, the side missions is where you get it all, right? The main missions, they throw some curveballs at you. There's a car chase scene. There's all these different things, right? But I mean, it's fighting. You're fighting waves of enemies, different kinds of enemies, different bosses, sometimes the same boss multiple times. Really, where this game shines in its, doing different things is the world, right? Living this kind of cultural thing and going wild all in its own right? So you got the side missions, which some of them are just wacky, just completely out there. Some of them are very, endearing. The thing I think that's honestly beautiful about this franchise, and I was watching some different essays talking about it, is that kind of blend. This game can take itself very seriously, and it can also truly not care, what it's doing. It can go kind of nuts. And that's present in this game. There's some side missions that are emotional. There's also some side missions where it's just a wild ride. And that follows it, right? It follows it into the side activities. So, playing darts. I think playing darts is actually a blast. Playing pool, all the different things you can do. Karaoke. The soundtrack in this game, let me first say, the soundtrack is elite. This is an elite soundtrack. The opening of this game, or that opening cutscene, elite. It's basically a summary of the game. So I didn't actually pay too close attention to what was happening. A lot of explosions, a lot of fights. I only watched it the first time. So when I start up the game, or when anybody starts up the game, you can watch it actually as many times as you want, and it'll happen, every time you open the game up. I only watched it through the first time because I did kind of notice, this is a lot of scenes that are from this game, so I don't want to, spoil it. But the music, the guitars, holy God, the music is incredible. The opening is incredible. The music is good throughout the game, and the karaoke, it's wild. I don't love the background, like the always. I hate that. I think it's very cringy, but at the same time, the music and the singing and just the mini games that are present there, I think are absolutely beautiful. So I want to give that credit. But all those smaller things, right? Going into the Sega buildings and playing some of the arcade stuff and the claw and all that, it's a lot of fun. And it's a different kind of open world. I don't even know if you would necessarily call it that, right? There's going to be a lot of the same. In fact, it is the same location. It's the same kind of place, although two of them, because of our two main characters, then they cross, then they go back. So there's enough to do. I wouldn't say this game is empty. I actually don't think I need any more than what this game provided. Then there's kind of like their side jobs, and they each have them, right, where you can send people out on recruitment missions or like finding equipment and whatnot. You can manage your own little casino-y thing where you manage the girls, and it's all these different mini games. And I honestly got really addicted to that because I think that's a lot of fun, just to kind of like worry about the stats and make sure you're understanding their sign language, right, when they do something with their hands. And oh, you want a towel. When you go like this, you want a towel. It's wild. Again, like, what other game do you know of that you're recruiting these women out in the streets and you're changing their stats, you're changing what they do? I mean, it's a little crazy, let's be honest, but it's the Yakuza feel, and I think that's awesome. And then, of course, there's the story and the characters. So while it is confusing, and I am definitely not here to like summarize it in any way, I do just want people to know, like, if you're new-time players, if you're thinking of maybe playing Yakuza 0 in 2023, it is confusing. I wouldn't say it's like Kingdom Hearts confusing or anything, but it's definitely up there. But the thing that's so wild about this game, and I watched a story explain that actually put it really well, it's just about land. The entire plot, this like 15 to 20 hour thing, multiple characters, there's lots of twists and all this stuff you don't see coming. It all comes down to that empty lot, which is tied up to one person that a bunch of different people, not even that many though, it's more like 3 or so people want to buy it or eliminate the person to get it. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's just a fight over land. And that's the entire game. And in that, you have all these twists and turns. You have kind of secret alliances being planned out. You have these 2 main characters right next to me on both sides. Both of them are incredible. Now, remember, I really don't know anything about this franchise. I think that's actually what made this game extremely special. Now, I was reading stuff about the ending where the ending of this game does seem to just put people in positions to get to the next game. It's very like Star Wars Episode 3, where like if it works for you, it works for you. But then you get to that ending, and it's just really quickly you're trying to get people into their starting locations for the next one. From an outsider perspective, I didn't really know what was going on. But then when I watch these story explains, read the comments, ask, well, why does this kind of stuff happen? And without spoiling the ending, some of the stuff that they kind of make you follow, like you have to believe, say one person doesn't know who the other person is, we'll keep it like that for spoiler purposes. It's like, I don't really buy it. I mean, I kind of see how you did it. And I guess I have to give it to you, right? The game forces you to give them a little bit of leeway with the ending to get everybody into their starting locations. But beyond that, and I think even that you can understand and tolerate when you're playing the game as a first-time player, I enjoyed it. I don't really know Kiryu as a character. Like, I know he's in a bunch of other of these future games. He is like the main character. Majima, he's a great character. And I try to do a little bit of digging with him, right? Because he kind of goes like psycho, and it's like, well, why does he go psycho? Does it make sense to have that kind of character flip in later games and stuff? I like it. So the characters, I think, are fantastic. I think they got like layers to them. It's got the cliches. It's got the stuff where it's like, man, like if you were in that situation, I don't know if you would let that person talk for as long as they did. Or to be honest with you, I mean, I kind of feel a little ruthless, especially when you're playing as such like badasses in this game. It's like, let's just go hard. Let's just take these people out, a lot of people. And, you know, they don't do it. They're kind of like morally centered. They're not going to kind of cross that line. Although that is back and forth in this game, right? Like, will you cross? What lines will you cross for what people or for what reason, right? It's a big theme. And brotherhood and friendship and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on. But, you know, like at certain points, it's like, okay, the person's right there. You know, you could do something, or you could keep letting people talk. It is those cliches. It is those tropes. And I mean, they're present for all of these kind of things. I mean, I mentioned Kingdom Hearts earlier. There's a lot that, you know, if it was made in like a Western kind of thing, it wouldn't be that. But you know what? That kind of would take away a little bit of what makes it special. Now, this game and this franchise, I think, is a little bit more special than just that. But the flair of where it's created and the flair of where it's set, I really think if you strip some of that away and you make it take itself a little bit more seriously, I do think you actually lose some of the magic. I think it's actually so incredibly special and weird about, again, how at some times this game takes itself incredibly seriously, and it's telling a mob story set in the 1980s there, right? I mean, that's the whole point. So it does take itself seriously, and at other times it absolutely doesn't. And that contrast can be so sudden and so quick, but at the same time, it feels right. It feels like it works for what it's trying to do, and I love it. I love this game a lot. I don't think this game is perfect, though. One thing we haven't talked about yet is the gameplay. So I like the fighting. I think each of them having their stances, I think is really cool. And it definitely, number one, when you switch between these two characters, they fight totally different already. Okay, so you immediately are like, well, maybe you have a favorite amongst the two, which I actually did. But then you have the different stances for them. So now not only are you playing as somebody different, but now you got different ways to play as that person. With that being said, the combat in this game, I do believe, is very repetitive. I don't love the idea that around halfway through this game, they just decided that their new way of doing the gameplay segments in terms of the fights was just to give you like 50 enemies to take out. I don't think this game really works all that well when it's like 1v30. And that may sound like I'm exaggerating, but I swear to you, maybe I have to think on the top of my head, I do believe there are some sequences in this game where you were fighting 15 plus enemies at once, and you do it over and over and over again. And some of the fighting stances aren't as fun as others, at least to me. I don't love Kiryu in terms of the fighting. I actually don't prefer him in this game. Doesn't mean I hate him, but I would just not prefer him. And so, you know, when you get into the fights over and over and over, now the boss fights are pretty cool, and they are diverse, and the bosses have different movesets and stuff, but the game just starts to get a little repetitive. I mean, I'll be honest, going in without really knowing much, I only knew this, okay? I know, like, the games. I know how many games there are and stuff like that. One of my close friends has played a lot of these games, and he's told me, like, there's no bad ones, and he thinks I'd really like it, and all that jazz. I think I got the sense from him, and I think I've gotten the sense online, one of the key strengths of this game, franchise, is characters and story, which I'm drawn to. I'm really drawn to. So I went into it kind of expecting that. Anything else would be, like, the cherry on top. What I got, actually, was much better of a story than I thought. Twists and turns that I didn't even see coming that I absolutely loved. Some of the things in this game, highly emotional, come out of literally nowhere. And I won't spoil it because there's some pretty neat moments. And they're nuts, and they're amazing. So that really blew me away. Then anything else would just be a cherry on top. I did know that these games were a little weird, so I knew, like, singing and dancing and all that kind of stuff. I knew that stuff would be in it. Really, I laughed at it. I mean, kind of like I went along with it almost. Again, I did actually multiple karaoke things in this game because I just loved it. I think it's a lot of fun. So I kind of embraced the weird side of it. The gameplay, I've seen it. I'd seen it in action. I know the gameplay's gone through a couple, especially recently, I believe it's gone through iterations. So this is a little bit more of like, well, I mean, this game came out, I believe, in Japan back in 2015, and then it came out everywhere else in around 2017. So it's not super, super old, but it's probably like the former era of the Yakuza games, whereas what we have now is kind of like the modern, it's changed a little bit. I don't mind the fighting. Again, though, it's definitely my least favorite thing. It's why I say, like, those side missions, not all of them are fighting. Some of them, end up resolving themselves through a fight, but some of them are, you choose, like, choice-based things, like you have to pick answers and stuff. Some of them are finding people on the street. Some of them are going to buy something for somebody and handing it off. Like, you do a lot of different things in this game for the side missions, and I actually really, really appreciate it. When it comes to the main missions, it's more of the story. You're really trying to figure out what's going on. And again, I mean, it is a little complicated, so I'll be honest, like, as they're talking, I'm really trying to take in, okay, who are we talking? There's different alliances, and there's all of this kind of, again, like, backdoor stuff that you really have to pay attention to. So that's what I was heavily focused on for the majority of the story elements and, focusing on the characters and stuff and learning to like them because I don't have anything to go off of, really. I know a little bit about where these two characters go, but not enough to literally form an opinion on them. I form my opinion on them, whether they were good or bad characters, actually based off this game. And they're extremely good, by the way. And so is other, like Makoto. Like, there's a lot of incredibly, incredibly good characters in this game. And again, a lot of the story you don't really see coming. I saw a little bit of it coming. I could kind of figure out some things before they happen, but it's intense. It's intense. It's awesome. And that's what I was going into this game to get. The gameplay side, not so much. I will say, I mean, there's one abomination in this game, and it's the car chase sequence. I don't know what they were thinking, but that felt ripped out of a game, like a movie tie-in game, or just a game from like 20 years ago that has no right being around anymore. That car chase is just very outdated gameplay mechanics that I think I was on a party chat with that friend that was telling me, all these good things, and I said, what in God's name is this? And he said, we don't talk about the car chase. Like, just pretend that didn't happen. I said, all right, I'll give them that, because the cutscenes before and after were incredible. It was just the actual gameplay. So it's a little hit or miss with that. It's not diverse enough. It doesn't really shake things up enough for me. But when you balance that out with everything else, and everything else far outweighs it. And then again, the other stuff is just how much do you want to manage these clubs? How much do you want to do these different things? For me, I dabbled in it, and then I started to really get engrossed in the story, and I said, let's just go off and let's finish this tale. Let's see what it does. And I think it's spectacular. There's a lot of really good characters in this game. Again, there's a lot of really good twists, and for as complicated at times that the story gets, to again take a couple steps back. And I did think about this like a couple times in the game, where it's like they're fighting over land the entire point, and then watching the story explained. And it's like, when you really break it down, you got land, you got a character, you got these different kind of groups fighting over it. You got some of them making deals with other people to make sure certain things happen. Like, that's where it gets complicated, is like the deals and people that work under certain groups, right? But if you eliminate that and you just think of what's the point of this game, it's land, a very small amount of square feet of land, and it just needs to be sold or given over or whatever. And that's it. That's the game. And once you realize that, it's actually kind of funny. It actually kind of fits the game, where that's it. That's the entire game, is that. And it's like, yeah. And I think I saw that that's a common thing. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's like a child. Sometimes, it's like one very small thing is the reason the entire game happens. I find that kind of cool. So let me know what you think of this gem in 2023. If it's the first time you've played it, or if you played it before, let me know. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I'll see you all on the next one.